I am a newer Dark Souls fan.
The first flame quickly fades.
In fact, I would argue that every single one of us Dark
Darkness
Souls
will
fans
shortly
at one
settle.
point has been a new fan. And I think that we can all relate to the first time that we were introduced to Dark Souls. You sort of can see it online. You'll see a lot of opinions. And Dark Souls fans happen to
But
be
one
a quite
day,
passionate bunch.
tiny flames will dance across the darkness.
From my view, the opinions that I was finding most were
Like
Dark Souls 2 is
omens
the worst,
by Lord's
Dark
path.
Souls 3 is the best, and Dark Souls 1 saved me. And there was me. I was stuck in the middle ground. In the depths of all of these normie opinions, I began to see a nuance. If anything, the Dark Souls games are simply divisive. I think it necessary now to preface my first Souls game was Elden Ring. I know, I was late. I enjoyed it, but I didn't anticipate playing the older titles. I knew they were good games, but I already had a backlog too large. However, thanks to Steam, it was on sale. I purchased it and neglected to play it for a year. I think I should mention now, I didn't buy a bundle with all three games. It wasn't Dark Souls 3 either. I kid you not, I purchased Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the Last Sin. Now, you might think I'm crazy, but hear me out. I saw many opinions online saying to give Dark Souls 2 a chance. Like a lot of people, argued for it, and on a more familiar, and my brother had also played all of the Souls games except Dark Souls 2. Simply put, it's just the worst one and isn't worth the time. Now, I do not always trust my younger brother, and, mixed with the opinions online and a bit of my own spiteful pride, I made the purchase. So, I was committed. I needed to play Dark Souls 2 before I could play the others. And, believe it or not, I happened to enjoy it. I think I can accredit this positivity I had due to a lack of knowledge of what a From Software game can contain. I didn't know what this world tendency mechanic was that was featured in Dark Souls 2 and Demon Souls. That the mechanic where your health reduces every death was not on the previous nor predecessor. I didn't look twice at boss fights that relied on hordes. The jank of the game I only assumed was due to age. And no, I did not pay enough attention to notice the windmill doesn't have an elevator going out the top into a volcano. And aside from my own ignorance, I quite enjoyed it for its design, story, and overall experience. Some of the highlights I would include that opening cinematic. It doesn't matter that the, person that jumped into the void had a gender and you got to choose your gender in the make your character screen. Stupid critique in my opinion. Majula, I think it's pretty great. The fire map thing that visibly displays progression, I also really appreciated. And the quick travel system, I don't think that the game would have worked without it. And the place with the cages, and then the elevator that leads to the dragons. Those are two of my most, I'd say, favorite locations in Souls games. And I really, really liked its length. It felt long, and like there was a lot to do. And I had to wander my way through most of it, just discovering the story. Oh, and the story. I think I understand it, and I might like it more than the other games. Now I have a defense prepared. You spend the entire game in search of a king. You fight gigantic beasts in incredibly creative environments, and when you finally reach him, he is now nowhere to be found. And this bitch is sitting there taunting you. And when you finally find him, he's a husk without his humanity, and the fight is depressingly long, even though I whipped him to death. Now I know this could be hated, but by the time I finished Dark Souls 1 and 3, I was pretty done with this flame shit. But regardless, I could go into all of the negatives of the game, but I would rather not. I'm here to convince you to play Dark Souls in a new order. Here is my proposal. This is only for the Dark Souls games. Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring are not going to be included. I want you to play Dark Souls 2 first, then Dark Souls 1, and then 3. None of these games are perfect. I want to make that clear. You probably already picked up on this, but I believe that Dark Souls 2 in a Void is not that bad of a game. Yes, in comparison to 1 and 3, its weaknesses can shine a lot more. However, if you play it first, your appreciation for 1 and 3 loses a lot of the romanticization that happens when you skip 2. By me taking this order, I noticed Dark Souls 1's bosses are large, and maybe a little too large, and running around them makes most a breeze. And as well, the second half of the game is pretty boring. Yeah, it wasn't great. As well, I just finished Dark Souls 3, and it does new combat, but from a world story standpoint, it borrows unreasonable amounts from 1. It almost feels like a nostalgia trip. And its environments, in my opinion, do not stick with you like the other games. I would even bring in Dark Souls 2. And don't get me wrong, I really like these games. I think that they're great and that they do a lot of things better than Dark Souls 2. I simply bring up these issues that I had noticed because I desire to look at the series as a whole equally. I think that by playing Dark Souls 2, you are afforded this ability to look at them all equally. I think that Dark Souls 2 has something to bring to the table just as much as 1 and 3. They should all be looked at together. When I see lists or game guides saying it is optional or unnecessary, I think it takes away from the opportunity a lot of people have of playing a great game. I think more than anything, I benefited from playing it first. But back to this order. Dark Souls 2 is in another dimension or land far from Dark Souls 1. For that reason, it is somewhat isolated. You still have dragons, similar bosses, and game systems, but it starts with you jumping into a portal vortex. Allow yourself to play through Dark Souls 2 and enjoy what it has to offer, including some of the interconnectivity of the world. Then I would invite you to play Dark Souls 1. It is older, but it takes the interconnectivity of 2 and outshines it. They as well play the same. From the Asylum, you navigate a world without fast travel, making use of passageways connecting every environment, but please do not take the key. I did this my first playthrough and it made it hell, completely screwing up the rhythm of the entire game. And once you complete it, you will feel satisfied. However, you will also feel empty and sad, and just maybe a less suicidal, because Dark Souls saved me. And then to conclude your Dark Souls playthrough, finish with Dark Souls 3. It is a fitting finale that introduces you to a completely new combat system, faster, and the enemies stun more easily. I would say it's even more interactive. One complaint I have, however, is that it looks, I'd say, a little bit too much like Bloodborne, especially in the early game areas. But more than anything, you have everything fresh in your mind from Dark Souls 1. So every single callback and story makes a little more sense. And then feel free to play the others. I personally enjoy them and think they all do something different that is good for the Soulsborne series as a whole. For a quick rendition of my current Soulsborne experience. Demon's Souls, I haven't touched it. Dark Souls 1 world design really just called attention and flourished because of its interconnectivity. Dark Souls 2 takes 1 and does more of it and makes torches extremely useful, and I found that fascinating. Dark Souls 3 raises the expectation for a From Software game when it comes to spectacle and boss design. Bloodborne, fuck that, I haven't played it. I played it in Brazil for like an hour. And then Sekiro, it changed the combat system to more of a rhythm based, and I find it incredibly satisfying to master, removing most dodging and sort of just replacing it with swords clashing. And then Elden Ring takes everything done well in all the other games. I enjoyed it as the first game I played and practically improves everything about them except for the performance. But let me know what you guys' thoughts are. Try to avoid just dismissing my statement, as I have thought about this quite a lot. And for those of you who feel it necessary to give DS2 a shot, I beg you comment down below. I am also curious if anyone else has played the games in the order I had. And feel free to like and subscribe. This is a new video type for me, and I am hoping it is the best I have made so far.